Hi viewers, I am Sridhar Chintala, Assistant Professor of Physics, ABV Government Degree College, Janagama. So far I am making video lectures on modern physics. So this is the video which is in the series of those lectures, and this is the video which is made on Bohr's atomic model. So what is the need of a atomic model? So in order to explain the observed experimental results, those are the spectral lines of atoms and the stability of atoms, we need to have what is the structure of an atom. So in order to study about the atom, various scientists, different scientists have gave different models, and there are the Thomson plum pudding model and the Rutherford model, and then Bohr's atomic model, and J.J. Thomson model, and Sommerfeld correction to the Bohr's theory. So there are different atomic models. So in this video lecture, I'm going to present you a topic which is related to atomic models, that is the Bohr's atomic model. So Bohr's atomic model is after the Rutherford's atomic model. So in order to overcome the difficulties produced by Rutherford atomic model, Bohr come forward and put bold postulates or proposals to propose the Bohr's atomic model. So this is the chapter which comes under the modern physics of BSc physics, and in the third year, 6th sem, we have as a compulsory paper. So this is the famous scientist Niels Bohr, so who gave this atomic model, which is the basis of all the atomic models. And these are the spectrum lines, and this is the hydrogen spectrum, and this is a model which showing the atomic nucleus. So in this video lecture, I am going to cover the contents as Bohr's atomic model, Bohr's model of hydrogen atom, explanation of atomic spectra of hydrogen atom, Rydberg principle, Bohr's correspondence principle, and the limitations, failures of Bohr's theory. So how the Bohr formed a model to explain the nature of an atom. So that is the Bohr's atomic model, and how he extended this Bohr's atomic model to hydrogen atom, and how successfully he explained the Bohr's model of hydrogen atom, and the spectral lines and spectra of the hydrogen atom, and then the Rydberg principle, which relates the transition of electrons from one energy state to the another energy state, and Bohr correspondence principle, which gives the limit, the classical limit to a quantum limit, how the classical and quantum are related to each other, and then the limitations are failures of Bohr's theory. So first of all, we look into the Bohr's atomic model first. So in order to discuss about the Bohr's atomic model, what is the need of Bohr's atomic model, we have to know. So there are difficulties or shortcomings of Rutherford model. Those are the spiral electron, the radiating orbits, and the continuous spectrum. So what is a spiral electron? According to Rutherford model, electron is revolving around the nucleus in a in the spiral orbits. So as it is moving and moving and come to fall on the in the nucleus in the final stage. So that means after reaching the nucleus, it has to collapse. So that is the concept of spiral electron, and which is not correct, and that has to be modified. And the second one is the radiating orbit. What do you mean by radiating orbit? Means when the electron is moving in the orbit, this is similar to a moving charge. As moving charge is radiating the electromagnetic radiation. So Rutherford assumed that the electromagnetic radiation which is emitted by an atom is due to the result of the the orbiting electrons which are radiating. So this radiating orbits also, the concept of radiating orbits also is not correct. And the third one is the continuous spectrum. So a spectrum emitted by an atom is a continuous one. So as the charge, the electron is moving in the circular orbit continuously, it emits the radiation continuously. But if you observe the spectrum of the atoms, the spectrum is not continuous. In fact, it is a discrete one. So these are the shortcomings of a Rutherford model. So to overcome or to counteract the shortcomings of Rutherford model, Bohr has come forward, and Niels Bohr, a Danish physicist, made some bold proposals to meet the challenge of spiral electrons as per Rutherford model. So Bohr accepted the Rutherford concept of nuclear atomic model, in which the massive nucleus is surrounded by orbiting electrons, the centripetal force required for rotation being provided by the electrostatic attraction between the electron and the nucleus. So Bohr continued the concept of Rutherford. The concept of Rutherford is the atom consists of a nucleus, and the electrons are surrounded by nucleus, and they are orbiting in the fixed orbits, and the force required to move in those circular orbits is provided by the centripetal force between the centripetal force is being provided by the electrostatic force between the nucleus and the electron. So this is the concept which is accepted by Bohr from the Rutherford model. And later, the next one, the Bohr extended the Planck's quantum principle to Rutherford atomic model and proposed the following assumptions. So Bohr carry forward the Rutherford's concept of the nuclear atomic model, in which the massive nucleus is surrounded by orbiting electrons, and as well as he extended the Planck's quantum principle to Rutherford atomic model. So there are the Bohr's assumptions, or Bohr's postulates, we may call them. So the first postulate is the electrons revolve around the nucleus in circular orbits, and these orbits do not radiate. So these are called the non-radiating orbits, and these orbits will have energy which is fixed, well-defined energies. So since the energy of the orbits or states are fixed, these states are called stationary states. So this is the first concept, or the first postulate of Bohr. The first postulate is there are circular orbits, or there are energy states which exist around the nucleus, for which the energy is fixed. So those energy states are called stationary states, and these orbits are called non-radiating orbits, and they have a well-defined energy En. And the second one is, not all the circular orbits are possible. Rather, only certain electron orbits are permissible, for which the angular momentum of the electron is an integral multiple of h by 2 pi, where h is the Planck's constant. So not all the circular orbits are permitted, but only the circular orbits are permitted. For those, the angular momentum is an integral multiple of h by 2 pi, where h is the Planck's constant. So the angular momentum is denoted by capital L. L is equals to mvr is equals to n into h by 2 pi, where n is equals to 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. And this n is called the principal quantum number, where m is the mass of the electron, v is the velocity of the electron, and r is the radius of the orbit in which the electron is revolving around the nucleus. So this is the second concept. So the second concept of Bohr gives the quantization condition of the orbiting electron, or the angular momentum, quantization condition of the angular momentum. So angular momentum must be an integral multiple of h by 2 pi. So not all the values are possible for the angular momentum. Only certain values are possible, which are the integral multiples of h by 2 pi. And then the third postulate is, when an electron jumps from one permitted orbit to the another permitted orbit, emission or absorption of radiation takes place. Either emission or absorption of the radiation takes place. So as there are circular orbits in the atomic model, the orbit which is closer to the nucleus is having least energy, and as we are moving away from the nucleus, the energy of the orbits increases. So in that way, we can call the orbits which are closer to the nucleus as low energy orbits, and the orbits which are away from the nucleus, we may call them as the high energy orbits or the high energy states. So that means a state is characterized or denoted by a letter, principal quantum number, and it is characterized by the energy E. So when an electron jumps from higher energy states to lower energy state, the energy is emitted. When an electron jumps from the lower energy state to the higher energy state, the energy is absorbed. So when the energy is absorbed by an electron, it jumps to the higher state. So when an energy is absorbed, it is called the absorption. When electron jumps from higher state to lower state, it is called the emission. So the frequency of the radiation emitted in the jump is related to the change in the atom's energy and is independent of the frequency of electron's orbital motion. So whatever the electron which is revolving around the nucleus, when it jumps from the one energy state to the another energy state, the frequency of the emitted radiation depends on the energy of the states, initial and final states, and it is independent of the frequency of the electron's orbital motion. So the frequency is given by h nu. So the energy is given by h nu is equals to EF minus EI, rather EI difference EF. So if E1 and E2 are the energies associated with the system in two states, then the frequency of the radiation emitted or absorbed or is given by EI minus EF is equal to h nu, where EI is the initial state and EF is the final state. So we may take the difference. So EI minus EF is equal to h nu. So this is the third postulate. The first postulate is stationary and non-radiating orbits, and the second postulate is the quantization condition of orbital angular momentum, and the third postulate is emission or absorption of radiation. So these are the three postulates put forward by Bohr in order to have a atomic model, and these are the Bohr's assumptions or Bohr's postulates. So using this Bohr's assumptions and postulates, so we may explain a model for atom, and emission or absorption of radiation by atoms can be easily understood by seeing this slide. So emission or absorption lights are due to radiative transitions. One is the radiative absorption and the radiative emission. Photon with energy excites electron from lower energy level to higher energy level, and this is called absorption. So when absorption takes place, the electron moves from the lower energy state to the higher energy state. So the electron is in the lower energy state initially. So upon impingement of the photon or the energy, it goes to the higher energy state, E1 to E2. So it can occur only if E gamma is equal to h nu is equals to E2 minus E1. So whatever the energy that we are giving to the electron, if it is equal to the difference of the energy levels, then only the absorption occurs. So this is called the radiative absorption. And then radiative emission. So electron makes transition to lower energy level and emits photon with energy h nu. So this emission takes place in two ways. One is a spontaneous emission and the second one is a stimulated emission. So spontaneous emission, the electron comes by its own to the ground state by giving the energy which is equal to the difference of energy levels. And the stimulated emission is we are making the electron to come to the lower energy state by emitting two radiations. That is called the stimulated emission. So these are the types of emissions. So radiative absorption and radiative emission and the types of emissions are the spontaneous emission and the stimulated emission. And then Bohr applied this postulates to explain the model for hydrogen. So Bohr's theory of hydrogen atom. So let us discuss the Bohr's theory of hydrogen atom. So when you consider the hydrogen atom, hydrogen is consisting of one proton and one neutron, so one electron. So it is 1H1. So consists of one proton and one electron. So an electron is orbiting around the proton. So this is the picture that explains, that depicts the model of hydrogen. So this is the central one, the proton having a positive charge, and there is an electron which is orbiting around the proton with a negative charge, and the mass of the electron is me, and as it is orbiting around the proton, so there is a force which exists that is called the centripetal force. So that centripetal force is directed towards the center, and the velocity of the electron is always tangential to the circular path. So hydrogen atom consisting of one proton and one electron. Electron revolves around the nucleus of hydrogen atom. And if we consider m, e, the mass of the electron, v, the velocity of the electron, r, the radius of the orbit, according to the laws of mechanics, the centripetal force on the electron is given by mv square by r. The centripetal force on electron is given by mv square by r, and from Coulomb's law, the electrostatic force of attraction is given by Ke is into E square by R square, where Ke is equals to the constant 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught. From Coulomb's law, we can write that the force between two charges is equals to F is equals to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into Q1 Q2 by R square, where R is the distance between the two charges, or the distance of separation. So F is equals to 1 by 4 pi epsilon into Q1 Q2 by R square, where Q1 is the proton charge and Q2 is the electron charge. So plus E into minus E, it is minus E square by R square. So here we are only considering the magnitude. So that is the reason we are neglecting that negative sign here. So the electrostatic force of attraction is equals to Ke is equals to Ke into E square by R square, with Ke is equals to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught. So this is the main idea of hydrogen atom, Bohr's model of hydrogen atom. So an electron is revolving around the nucleus, which consisting of only one proton. So the force required for the circular motion, that is called the centripetal force, is being provided by the electrostatic attraction between the proton and the electron. And using this relation, we can calculate radius of orbits and energy of the orbits and velocity of the electrons. So let us discuss radius of orbits first. So we are taking the concept of the law of conservation of energy, or in order to electron to move in the circular orbit, it needs some centripetal force, and there is a electrostatic force of attraction between the electron and proton, and these two forces must be equalized. So in order to have the constant motion, so radius of orbits, since centripetal force required for rotation being provided by electrostatic attraction between the electron and neutron, so we may have mv square by r is equals to ke into e square by r square, where the left hand side, the LHS, is the centripetal force and the RHS is the electrostatic force. So using this equation and using the second postulate of Bohr, as the angular momentum of the electron is in a permitted orbit must be an integral multiple of h by 2 pi, the angular momentum is equals to L is equals to mvr is equals to n h cut, where h cut is equals to h by 2 pi. So using the two relations, we can write the expression for the velocity as v is equals to n h cut by mr, and v is equals to e by under root 4 pi epsilon naught into mr. So this is from the centripetal force condition, the first condition. So we are having mv square by r, that is the centripetal force, is equals to the electrostatic force of attraction, that is 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into e square by r square. So in this square is cancelled for this r, so we have v square is equals to, this m comes this side, e square divided by 4 pi epsilon naught into r. This v square is equals to e square by 4 pi epsilon naught into r, into that m comes this side. So this is the equation. So to have an expression for velocity, we should have the root on either side, and we'll get the pen is right. So v is equals to e by under root 4 pi epsilon naught into r mr. So this is the expression for v from the condition of the equalization of centripetal force and the electrostatic force of attraction, and this is the condition from the orbital angular momentum, which is quantized. So from these two expressions, we are having the expression for velocity as e, and the if you square on both sides this equation, we get n square h cut square by m square r square is equals to e square by 4 pi epsilon naught into mr. So this is the from this we can get the expression for the radius. Let us drop this. Right. So this is the condition, this is the expression we got from the equalization of the centripetal force and electrostatic force of attraction, and this is from the orbital angular momentum, quantization of orbital angular momentum. And then we have the expression for the Rn. So here there is a square and here r, so r and square will be cancelled, we'll be left with one r here. So this r goes this side, r is equals to, so I will take the pen again. So from this equation I am writing, from this equation, so this square and r is cancelled, and we are left with R is equals to, so this R is going this side, so R is equals to N square H cut square into this 4 pi epsilon naught M. So this M and square cancelled, so this 4 pi epsilon naught comes into the numerator divided by this M E square. This E square comes here and the R goes this side and we are left with M E square. So this is N square H cut square into 4 pi epsilon naught into divided by M into E square. So in this equation, this H cut is a constant, 4 pi epsilon naught is also a constant, M is the mass of the electron which is also a constant, E is the charge of the electron which is also a constant. So making all these as one constant, A naught is equal to 4 pi epsilon naught into H cut square by M E square, and we are left with R is equals to N square into A naught, and where R is the radius of the nth orbit, so we are denoting this R as Rn. So Rn is equals to N square into A naught. So this is the expression for the radius of the nth orbit in the Bohr's atomic model, and if you substitute n is equals to 1, you will get the radius of the hydrogen atom. So let us move to the next section. Right. So this is Rn is equal to n square into A naught, where A naught is a constant which is equal to 4 pi epsilon naught H cut square by M E square. And from this condition, we can write that from the above equation, we can say that the radii of the permitted orbits are proportional to n square. This Rn is directly proportional to n square since this is a constant. So we can write that Rn is directly proportional to n square. So R, the radius is proportional to n square, and increase in the ratio of 1:4:9:16 and so on and so forth from one orbit to the next orbit. So this is the relation. This is how the radius of the Bohr orbit is related to the principal quantum number. So Rn is directly proportional to n square. And if you calculate the value of A naught by substituting n is equals to 1, R1 will be equal to A naught, and A naught is equals to, by substituting all the values of Planck's constant and permittivity, the mass of the electron and charge of the electron, we get A naught is equals to 0.529 angstroms. And this A naught is called as the Bohr's radius, since it is the radius of the first orbit. So it is named as the Bohr's radius. So it is the diameter of the hydrogen atom in its lowest energy or ground state. Sorry, it is not diameter, it is the radius. So this is equals to the radius of the hydrogen atom in its ground state. And next, the energy of the orbits. So we have already derived the expression for the radius of the orbits, that is Rn is equals to n square into A naught, where A naught is equals to 4 pi epsilon naught into H cut square by M E square. And the next we have move on to the energy of the orbits. So as far as the energy is the concerned, energy of the electron is concerned, energy is the electron is moving around the nucleus. As it is moving around the nucleus, it is having the kinetic energy, and the electron being a charged particle, so it is moving around the nucleus, which is positive charge. So there exists an electrostatic potential energy. So that means this electron which is moving around the nucleus will have the kinetic energy as well as the potential energy. So if you look into the potential energy of the electron, the energy of the electron is partly kinetic and partly potential. And the electric potential energy of the atom is given by, generally we calculate the potential energy as U is equals to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into Q by R. So here this charge is PE is equals to KE into Q1 Q2 by R, where Ke is the constant, which is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught, and Q1 is the charge of the electron and Q2 is the charge of the nucleus. It is minus Ke into E square by R. So this is the potential energy, and then the kinetic energy of the electron is given by general expression for the kinetic energy is Ke is equals to half mv square, where we can substitute the value of V from the previous section. V is equals to we have E by under root 4 pi epsilon naught into mr. So if you substitute that in the kinetic energy expression, we may have half mev square is equals to Ke into E square by 2r. So let us simplify this. So this is half mev square. This is half me, and in place of v square we may write this. So this is E square by 4 pi epsilon naught into me into r. So this me cancelled, and this 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught is Ke into E square by, so this is 2 into r. So Ke into E square by 2r is the expression for the kinetic energy with a positive sign. So that means the kinetic energy is positive and the potential energy is negative. And if you consider the total energy of the electron, it is the sum of kinetic energy and the potential energy. So the total energy of the electron is given by kinetic energy plus potential energy. So E is equals to, the kinetic energy is Ke into E square by 2r minus Ke into E square by r, the potential energy, and we have E is equals to minus Ke into E square by 2r. This is the total energy of the electron which is revolving around the nucleus of the hydrogen atom. So this is the energy of the hydrogen atom, or the electron which is moving in the hydrogen atom. E is equals to minus Ke into E square by 2r. And substituting the value of small r in the energy equation, we have En is equals to Ke into minus E square by 2 into r value. The value of r is, so this we taken from the radius value, Rn is equals to n square into a naught. So that value we are substituting here. So Ke into minus E square by 2 into pi m E square by epsilon naught into n square h square. So this gives the value of the total energy as me into Ke square into e to the power of 4 by 2 h square into 1 by n square. And if you substitute all the values of the constants, since me is the mass of the electron, which is a constant, K is the proportionality constant, and E is the charge of the electron, and h cut being provided from the Planck's constant. If you substitute all the values, we have En, the energy of the nth orbit, as equals to minus 13.6 by n square electron volts, where n is equals to 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. So this is the energy of the nth orbit. So the sign which is appearing in the energy equation is negative. The above equation gives the energy of the electron revolving in the nth orbit, and the negative sign of the energy indicates that the electron is bound to the nucleus. So whenever the energy is negative, means it is a boundedness. So in the negative sign in the energy shows the boundedness of the particle. So as the energy expression consisting of negative sign, that indicates the electron is bound to the nucleus. So the electron has a minimum energy when it is in its innermost orbit, that is n is equals to 1, called the ground state. So when you substitute n is equals to 1, you are left with En is equals to minus 13.6 electron volts. So that gives the energy of the innermost orbit, that is n is equals to 1, and that is called the ground state of the hydrogen atom. So the ground state energy of the hydrogen atom is E1 is equals to minus 13.6. And the energy is emitted when an electron jumps from an outer orbit to an inner orbit. So as we already know, the inner orbits are having less energy than compared to the outermost orbits. So when an electron jumps from the outermost orbit to innermost orbit, the energy is emitted. Similarly, an electron must be imparted energy in order that electron to jump to an outer orbit. So that state of the atom when one of its electrons is forced to revolve in an outer orbit is called an excited state. So ground state is the minimum energy state, so innermost orbit, and what is called energy excited state is when an electron of any atom is forced to move in the outermost orbit is called the excited state. That means the electron has to come to the ground state after a certain period of time. So the excited state is defined as the state of the atom when one of its electrons is forced to revolve in outer orbit. And next, the energy emitted. So we already calculated the energy of the Bohr's orbit. So Bohr's orbit energy is En is equals to minus 13.6 by n square. So when an electron jumps from higher energy state to the lower energy state, the energy is emitted. Or otherwise, in order to electron to promote from the lower energy state to higher energy state, certain amount of energy is, has been given to the electron in order to overcome the energy difference between the energy states. And if you calculate the energy emitted in the case of emission of radiation, so let an electron in an outer orbit of quantum number n2 having energy E2 jumps to an inner orbit of quantum number n1 having an energy E1. The energy emitted is h nu is equals to E2 minus E1. So when an electron jumps from the higher energy state to lower energy state, energy is emitted, and the energy so emitted is given by h nu is equals to E2 minus E1. And if you calculate the energy, the value of the energy in terms of radius and velocity, so this is the energy emitted, that is h nu is equals to E2 minus E1, where we are having the energy expression for En is equals to me ke into e to the power of 4 by 2 h cut square into 1 by n square. So here we are having two energy states. So the electron is making transition from the higher energy state to lower energy state, that is from E2 to E1. So the energy so emitted is equals to h nu is equals to E2 minus E1. E2 is equals to minus me ke into e to the power of 4 by 2 h cut square into 1 by n2 square minus E1 is minus me into ke into e to the power of 4 by 2 h cut square into 1 by n1 square, where this minus into minus becomes plus. So h nu is equals to minus of this much plus minus this. So this is the energy of the higher energy state, that is E2, and this is the lower energy of the lower energy state, that is E1. So by rearranging these two terms, we have h nu is equals to me ke into e to the power of 4 by 2 h cut square into 1 by n1 square minus 1 by n2 square. And if you write the equation for the frequency, this is nu is equals to me into e to the power of 4 by 8 epsilon naught into h cube. where we substituted the value of Ke and H here. So we are having, so this is the value of nu. So Me into e to the power of 4 divided by Ke is equals to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught. So 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught here I am writing into 2 into h cut square is h square by 4 pi. So this is Me into e to the power of 4 by 4 pi epsilon naught, that is 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into 2 into h square by 4 pi square, 2 pi square, so that is 4 pi square. So we are having this 4 pi square into the numerator, so this is 4 pi square and this will be cancelled here. So this 4 pi gets cancelled, and Me into e to the power of 4 by 2 epsilon naught into h square, and when this h comes this side, this becomes h cube. So the frequency expression is nu is equals to Me into e to the power of 4 by 8 epsilon naught h cube into 1 by n1 square minus 1 by n2 square, and nu is equals to c by lambda. So this is the relation from the velocity and frequency relation. So this nu is equals to c by lambda, and if you write for 1 by lambda, so this will be equals to 1 by lambda is equals to nu by c. So this is the value of nu, and we are dividing this nu by c. So Me into e to the power of 4 divided by 8 epsilon naught into c h cube into 1 by n1 square minus 1 by n2 square, and this 1 by lambda is the reciprocal of the wavelength, is defined as the wave number. So that is indicated with the nu bar is equals to capital R into 1 by n1 square minus 1 by n2 square, where this R is called the Rydberg constant, and R is equals to Me into e to the power of 4 by 8 epsilon naught into CH cube. So the value of the Rydberg constant is 1973700 meter inverse. So as this is the measure for the wave number, the units for the wave number is the meter inverse. So this is the Rydberg constant, and this is the wave number of the radiated or the emitted radiation, and this is the frequency of the emitted radiation. So this is the energy emitted when an electron in an outermost orbit having quantum number n2 having energy E2 jumps to an inner orbit of quantum number n1 and having energy E1, and the frequency is given by mu is equals to Me into e to the power of 4 by 8 epsilon naught h cube into 1 by n1 square minus 1 by n2 square, and this 1 by lambda is denoted as the wave number, and wave number is given by nu bar is equals to R into 1 by n1 square minus 1 by n2 square. So using this equation, we can explain the atomic spectra of hydrogen. So according to Bohr's atomic model, the energy associated with hydrogen atom with the electron revolving in the nth orbit is given by the energy expression is En is equals to Me into Ke square into e to the power of 4 by 2 h cut square into 1 by n square. I think there is no square here. Right. So then En is equals to Me into Ke square into e to the power of 4 by 2 h cut square is equals to minus 13.6 divided by n square into n square electron volts. So when you substitute n is equals to 1, that gives to the value of the first Bohr orbit, that is E1, is equals to minus 13.6 electron volts. So this corresponds to the ground state energy of the atom. Similarly, the energy of the atom with the electron in the second orbit is, so this is the energy of the first orbit, and if you substitute n is equals to 2, you will get E2, that is the energy of the second orbit, that is E2 is equals to minus 13.6 by 4 electron volts. So that is minus 3.4 electron volts. So likewise, if you calculate the energies of the next orbits, E1, E2, E3 and E4 and so on and so forth, En, so that is, if you substitute n is equals to infinity, let us consider that the orbits are having infinite value. So if you consider the n is equals to infinity, you will get E infinity is equals to, as the n is in the denominator, 1 by infinity goes to 0. So the energy of the infinite orbit is equals to 0. So that means we are having the higher energy states as we are moving away from the nucleus. So when an electron in the outermost orbit jumps to the innermost orbit, so we may observe a radiation which is characterized by a frequency which is characterized by a frequency, and energy of that radiation is equal to the energy differences in the energy states of the orbits. So likewise, we can have the energy expressions for N3 and N4 and so on and so forth up to N infinity, N is equals to infinity. So E3 is equals to minus 1.511 electron volts and E infinity is equals to 0 volts. So this is the pictorial diagram which explains about the spectra of hydrogen atom. The energy level diagram of hydrogen atom is shown in figure. As the electron transits from excited state to the ground state, the figure illustrates the emission of spectral lines. So here we are having the energy states of hydrogen atom. This is the first energy level and second energy, third energy level, fourth, fifth, and so on and so forth. So if an electron transits from second state to first state, third to first, fourth to first, five to first, that means all the transitions which are onto the first state or onto the ground state gives out to be a series of spectral lines, and that series is denoted as the Lyman series. So in order to have a spectral line, we have to have a transition from one energy state to the another energy state, and energy which is higher to energy which is lower. So if we consider the transitions onto first energy state from the next energy states, so that gives to be the Lyman series. Likewise, we have Balmer series, Paschen series, bracket series and Pfund series. There are different series of spectral lines for hydrogen atom. So if you look into the series consolidatedly, the explanation of hydrogen spectra, so this is series, transition from and transition onto and the region. So the Lyman series, first series is the Lyman series. The Lyman series, in the Lyman series, the transition is taken from the higher energy states greater than 1, and the transition is onto n is equals to 1. So all the transitions which are from the higher energy states to n is equals to 1 gives out to be a series of spectral lines. So, and that series is called a Lyman series, and these radiations, the frequencies of these radiations fall in the region of ultraviolet region. And the next series is the Balmer series. So in the Balmer series, the transitions are onto the second energy state, that is N1 is equals to 2 and N2 is equals to 3, 4, 5 and so on and so forth. And the frequency of this series fall in the region of visible region. And the third one is the Paschen series. Paschen series, the transitions are on to N1 is equals to 3 and from n2 is equals to 4 comma 5 comma 6 and so on and so forth, and this series comes under and falls in the region of infrared region, and bracket series the transitions were onto n1 is equals to 4 from the energy states greater than 4, that is from 5 6 and 7 and so on and so forth. And the last series is the fun series, n2 is equal to 6 7 8. So that means the transitions are taking place from 6th 7th and 8th states to the 5th state, that is energy level of 5. So n1 is equals to 5. So these three series, passion, bracket, fun, these three series fall in the region of infrared region. So this is about the hydrogen spectrum. So in the case of hydrogen spectrum, the spectral lines are formed due to the transitions, various transitions of the electrons from the higher energy states to the lower energy states. Depending upon the transition onto the level, there are different series: Lyman, Balmer, passion, bracket, and fun. So these are the series of hydrogen spectrum. So these are the spectral lines which are practically observable using a spectrometer. And then the Rydberg combination principle. So this Rydberg combination principle gives the value of the energy emitted or absorbed. So a spectral series is a family of lines emitted by an atom whose frequencies may be deduced from a simple law by the change of one parameter. So Rydberg combined and formed a principle. From this we can calculate the frequencies of any spectral line by changing one parameter, and that is given by 1 by lambda is equals to nu bar is equals to RH into 1 by nf square minus 1 by ni square, where RH is the Rydberg constant for hydrogen atom and nf is the final state and ni is the initial state, where ni is greater than nf. Where ni is greater than nf, that means the transition must be taken place from the higher energy state to the lower energy state. So this is the wave number, and the combination principle follows that the wave number nu bar mn of a spectral line is always given by the difference of two terms known as spectral terms. So that is nu mn bar is equals to T of m minus T of n. So this is called as the Rydberg combination principle. From this we can calculate the frequencies of the spectral lines of hydrogen atom. Then the quantum mechanical model of atom. From this we can explain how an electron moves as a wave in the given circular orbit. So the figure illustrates that the electron orbit nucleus only in whole number of wavelengths. So that is the electron moves in the circular orbit of the atom in the around the nucleus in having certain wavelengths only. Not all wavelengths are possible. So only multiple of wavelengths are allowed. So this is the vibrating guitar string and this is the orbiting electron. So we may take analogy between these two. So from that we can explain the quantization of angular momentum from the de Broglie's law. So de Broglie found an interpretation of Bohr's angular momentum quantization in terms of his wave theory. An electron orbit would be stable only if it contained an integral number of electron wavelengths. So as far as Bohr's theory is concerned, there are stationary orbits which are having a well-defined energy which is a fixed one. So in order to have the stable energy states or electron orbits, it must contain an integral number of electron wavelengths. So that is the concept which is developed by de Broglie. So that means the circumference of the orbit must be equals to an integral multiple of lambda. So 2 pi r is equals to n into lambda, where n is equals to 1 comma 2 comma 3 and so on and so forth. So from the de Broglie's wavelength of an electron, we can write h is equals to, sorry, lambda is equals to h by mv. So from this we can write lambda is equals to 2 pi r by n. So 2 pi r is equals to nh by mev. So here we are substituting the value of lambda here. Lambda is equal to h by me into v. So this is equals to 2 pi r is equals to nh by mev. So from this we can write that this mev goes this side, that is me into v goes this side, becomes me into vr. The orbital angular momentum is equals to nh by 2 pi, that h by 2 pi becomes nh cut. So mvr is equals to nh cut, that is nh by 2 pi. So this is the second postulate of Bohr, that is the quantization of angular momentum, which is derived from the de Broglie's concept. So this is the quantization of angular momentum and de Broglie's waves. So this argument is strengthened the wave theory of matter. Then the Bohr's correspondence principle. So there is a classical electrodynamics and there is a Bohr's atomic model. So if you combine these two, we'll get the Bohr's correspondence principle. That means classically electron is revolving around the nucleus, and it will have a frequency, that is the orbital frequency. And if that orbital frequency is equals to the frequency which is calculated using Bohr's atomic model, that is called the Bohr's correspondence principle. So determines the properties of radiation. If you combine both classical electrodynamics and Bohr's atomic model, that gives out to be the correspondence principle. So it needs a principle to relate the new modern results with the classical ones. So that is the Bohr's correspondence principle. In the limits where classical and quantum theories should agree, the quantum theory must reduce to classical result. So that means we have to relate the classical limits and quantum limits. That is, classical limit and quantum theory must be related. That is the Bohr's correspondence principle. So according to Bohr's correspondence principle, the frequency of radiation emitted, n, the classical one, is equal to the orbital frequency of the electron around the nucleus. So this is the classical one. So omega by 2 pi, that is v by r by 2 pi. So from the values of velocity, if we substitute in the equation, we'll get me to the power of 4 by 4 pi epsilon naught square h cube into 1 by n cube. And this is the frequency which is calculated using the classical principles. And this should agree with the frequency of the transition from n plus 1 to n, where n is very large. So the frequency calculated by Bohr is equals to E naught by h into 1 by n square minus 1 by n plus 1 whole square. So by simplifying that, we'll get, if for large values of n, substituting for E naught, we'll get a Bohr frequency is approximately equal to 2 E naught by h n cube. So that is nu Bohr is equals to m e to the power of 4 by 1 by n cube, sorry, m e to the power of 4 by 4 pi epsilon naught square into h cube into 1 by n cube, and that is equals to the classical frequency. So this is called the Bohr's correspondence principle, where the quantum calculations or quantum theory relates to or reduced to the classical limit. And then the effect of the finite mass of the nucleus. As far as the Bohr's atomic model is concerned, the nucleus is stationary. That means it remains at rest and the electron revolves around the nucleus. But in fact, the electron is not the atom, the nucleus of the atom is not so heavy that it cannot be fixed. So as per the Bohr theory, the nucleus of the hydrogen atom is so heavy that it remains fixed at the center of the circular orbit while the electron revolve around it. But this will be true only when the mass of the nucleus is infinitely large as compared with the case of the electron. In fact, the nucleus and the electron revolve around a common center of mass with the same angular velocity and the nucleus in an orbit of smaller radiation as compared to the electron orbit. So as per the Bohr theory, electron should revolve around the nucleus in a circular orbit where the nucleus is held stationary. But in practical, if we observe, the nucleus is not so infinite in mass, so it will not be at rest. So this nucleus is also moving around the common center of nucleus and the electron, the common center of mass. But the nucleus is moving in a smaller radius, orbit of smaller radius, whereas the electron moves in a radius, the orbit of large radius. So this is the pictorial diagram which explains about the center of mass of the nucleus and the electron. So where the capital M related to the mass of the nucleus and the small m is related to mass of the electron, and they revolve around the common center of mass O, and the distance between M and capital M is smaller, and the small m, the electron is at a distance of small r1 from the center of mass, and the mass m, the nucleus, is at a distance of small r2 from the center of mass. So the electron of mass small m and the nucleus of mass capital M at distances r2 and r1 respectively both revolve around their common center of mass O, which remains fixed in space. So this is the pictorial diagram which shows the electron and the nucleus, which revolve around their common center of mass O, which remains fixed in space. And since the system is in equilibrium, the moments of small m and capital M about O will be equal. According to center of mass theory, the moments of the masses will be equal. That is, capital M into R1 is equal to small m into R2, and R1 into small m plus capital M is equal to m into R1 plus R2 is equal to small m into R. So from this we can calculate, we can write the expressions for R1 and R2 in terms of small r. So R1 is equals to m by capital M, small m plus capital M into R, and R2 is equals to capital M into small r by small m plus capital M. So these are the values of R1 and R2. So we may substitute this in the further equations. Both the electron and the nucleus revolve around O with the same angular velocity omega. So the total orbital angular momentum of the atom is the sum of the angular momentum of electron and the nucleus. So the total angular momentum is given by the angular momentum of the electron and the angular momentum of the nucleus. So the sum of those two. So the total angular momentum, thus L is equals to m r1 square omega plus m r2 square omega. I think this should be plus here. We should have plus sign here. So L is equals to m r1 square omega plus m r2 square omega. So this is the total angular momentum, which is equals to angular momentum of the nucleus plus angular momentum of the electron. So we should have a plus sign here. Then L is equals to m into r1 is mr by small mr by small m plus capital M whole square into omega, plus, and r2 is capital mr by m plus small m, so small m into r2 square into omega. So in this we are having capital M, small m, capital M, small m, and r and omega are common. So if you write the total, taking the common terms as common, L is equals to capital M into small m divided by m plus capital M into omega r square. So capital M into small m divided by small m plus capital M this is defined as the reduced mass. So we have the expression for the orbital angular momentum for the combination of electron and the nucleus is given by L is equals to so this is mu is equals to small m into capital M by small m plus capital M is called the reduced mass. So where mu is called the reduced mass of the electron because it is less than m by a factor of 1 by 1 plus small m by capital M. So this is the reason it is called the reduced mass. So the angular momentum of the atom about the center of mass is given by L is equals to mu into omega r square, where mu is equals to small m into capital M by small m plus capital M. So according to Bohr's second postulate, electron can move only in those orbits for which the angular momentum of the atom is an integral multiple of h by 2 pi. So we may write that mvr is equals to nh by 2 pi, that is L is equals to nh by 2 pi, and L we are having mu omega r square here. So from this, a comparison of the last two equations shows that a replacement of small m by mu in Bohr's derivations takes into account the finite mass of the atomic nucleus. So now the energy of the electron in the nth orbit of one electron atom is given by, when an electron jumps from n2 to state n1, the excess energy is radiated in the form of the quantum of frequency nu is given by, so this is En is equals to 2 pi square mu ze square e to the power of 4 divided by h square n square. So where we are having these two terms as extra, this is mu and this is z. So this is called the correction due to the finite mass of the nucleus. So here we are replaced m with mu and we are added one more term called the atomic number. And the frequency so emitted is given by nu is equals to this into 1 minus 1 by n square minus ni square. So this is the frequency. So in terms of wave number, if you write 1 by lambda is equals to nu bar is equals to nu by c is equals to rz into z square into 1 by nf square minus 1 by ni square, where rz is 2 pi square mu e to the power of 4 by h cube into c, where this rz is the Rydberg constant which is modified due to the finite mass of the nucleus. So since mu is slightly less than small m, the electron energies are slightly less negative than if the nucleus were at rest. So this is infinitely heavy. If we consider the nucleus is very heavy, then the energies are negative. And since the mu is slightly less than small m, the electron energies are slightly less negative than if the nucleus were at rest. Then the wavelengths of the spectral lines computed on the basis of the above energy equation are slightly larger than those corresponds to an infinitely heavy nucleus. The finite nuclear mass causes a slight variation in the Rydberg constant from atom to atom. So that is Rz includes the atomic number. And the final one, the limitations of Bohr's theory. So Bohr's theory based on the circular stationary electron orbits were able to explain successfully a number of experimentally observed facts and has correctly predicted the spectral lines of neutral hydrogen atom and singly ionized helium atom in terms of the principal quantum number n. However, the theory fails to explain the following facts. One is it could not account the spectra of atoms more complex than hydrogen. It fails to give any information regarding the distribution and intensities of the electrons in atoms. It does not explain the experimentally observed variations in intensity of the spectral lines. And it fails to explain the transitions of electrons from one level to another level, the rate at which they occur, or the selection rules which apply to them. It fails to account the fine structure of spectral lines. And Bohr's theory could not give account to Stark effect and Zeeman effect. And this theory cannot be used for the quantitative study of chemical bonding. And these are the limitations to Bohr theory. And with this lecture concludes. Thank you. Thank you for your patient listening.